for me, it really starts with the administrative reforms within the public service.
Administrative powers that in terms of public management or public administration should be with the heads of departments are with the political principals.
I think the reforms, and I really hope and pray that they would actually go through and be accepted as they are.
So those are the two kind of tight issues that I think are making some people doubt supporting the legislation itself. Welcome to episode 4 of Governing Tomorrow, which is powered by the New South Institute. This is our podcast as the New South Institute. We discuss the future of public service. We have conversations with various leaders in public service who are driving and steering the reforms agenda in the public service. Today, we have a very busy woman, and our public protector, Advocate Kholeka Gcaleka, is going to be having a conversation with us. September is Public Service Month, and so it's important that we have this conversation because we just really look at how reforms may contribute to service delivery. In fact, why reforms? Reforms are for the purpose of contributing and improving service delivery, but also look at the role of the public protector in how the work that you do contributes in improving service delivery. So welcome, Advocate Gcaleka.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Ms. Makasi. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Tell us about yourself. Who are you?
That's always a question that you're like, okay, who am I?
Waiting.
So what I normally say to people is that I think I'm really a catalyst for social justice, justice in the broader sense, I'm a mover and shaker. I'm really the kind of a person who likes to see change, who likes to see a commitment to change broadly. And I think my personality as well has really been around the kind of work that I do, not just as a public protector. I started off my career as a public prosecutor, and the bulk of the work there is really to ensure that justice is done for those who are unable to stand up for themselves, who really rely on the system. So it's always been about ensuring that the system is in such a manner that it is able to respond to the needs of the people. And that translates directly to the kind of work that I do now as the public protector. But I never want to lose who I am as a Kholeka. So I am a Kholeka, I'm a human being, very passionate, about every area of my life. That is why I do my work passionately, and I'm a very compassionate person. So I wouldn't want somebody to walk away from my desk. It doesn't matter whether it's at home or at work, finding themselves that, what was I doing here? I didn't get any assistance. So I'm really that kind of a person who would like to make a change in every person's life. If I can't do it broadly in our country, but at least let me touch a life. Let there be somebody who says, I've met her, I discussed my challenges with her. At least 1 and 2 have been resolved. So that's really who I am. And in terms of my leadership, I really see myself as a transformational leader, a leader who, for instance, when it comes to the public service reforms, I would like to see those reforms being more than the paper that they are written on, being a living document for each and every one of us within the public service. But I'm also that one person who at least would like to see some harmony in our country. And we wouldn't see harmony if justice is not done, and at least the socio-economic factors of it, people finding themselves in a situation where they at least are closer to justice. They are closer to the liberation that's really envisaged in our constitution.
That's a mouthful. I also know that you are the chair of Africa Ombuds Research Center. You are a member of Africa Ombuds and Mediators Association, and you are president of International Ombuds Institute on the African region. So my question is, where do you get all the time to do the work that you do, but also to do all this other work in terms of the ombuds work that you do globally?
Well, I make the time. I make the time. It's quite difficult tasks, but South Africa is positioned in such a manner that it is a gateway to Africa. So being the public protector in South Africa, I really feel like I'll be denying our continent and the world if I wouldn't play a role in leadership at that level. The public protector, by the way, it's the most transformational institution of its kind in the world. When you travel in the globe and you inform people of the work that we do, I mean, presidents, speakers of parliament, they say, we know the public protector in South Africa. They might not know the individual, but they know the work of the public protector in South Africa. And how do you do it? How does South Africa do it? We can never deny the continent in the world of how we actually do it in South Africa. So it is the most progressive legislative framework, and it is important that we try and ensure that other countries at least are shaped closer to the work that we do. So I try by all means to ensure that I find the time to at least share that knowledge and shape best practices.
So you've been a public protector now for 2 years and some months?
It's hardly 2 years. It
Oh
feels
my
longer. It feels longer. I was
You've been very
appointed.
busy,
Yeah,
eh?
I was appointed on the 3rd of November in 2023. I think the acting period, I acted for a while, So, yeah.
And you were a deputy before
Before,
acting, yeah.
I've been in the institution for over 5 years.
So what would you say are some of the key successes of the institution under your leadership?
It's resilience. I don't even want to go into the work that the institution has done over the period, but just the resilience of the institution standing, the doors opening, despite the crisis that the institution has been through. But most importantly, it's the shift in the approach to our work, taking more of a systemic approach into the work that we do, but also diving more into our anti-corruption mandate and ensuring that the institution is at the center of the accountability ecosystem. And I think those are the areas that we've really been able to delve into. Yeah.
So when we think about the public protector, generally people think about investigations. People think about remedial actions, recommendations that are coming from investigations. People also think about holding people accountable.
Yes.
But I also do think that there's a bigger role of shaping reforms in the public service. And just take us through what your thinking is about that role, and how do you, as the Public Protector South Africa, play that role whilst you are continuing to implement your mandate?
The PPSA has got a developmental mandate, really, to beyond just being a pillar of our democratic dispensation, but also of foresight. Through the work that we do, we collect a lot of data. So it is important that we position ourselves to take that leadership within the state of being able to project foresight. But also our investigative methodology is what happened, what should have happened, and what ought to happen. How do you ensure that you redress the prejudice? And from redressing, it's not just looking at individual challenges and individual complaints for here and now, but basically to say, how do we have a better South Africa? For instance, through the work that we've done and the remedial action that we've taken, we easily extract data and say to the government institutions and other state institutions we meet, this is where you should be in 5 years. It's easy for functionaries to say, I don't have a budget now. We're like, but it's not about now. It's about 5 years. In your next IDP, what is it that you are looking at? At your next strategic planning, how do you incorporate this? How do you start planning for your next 5 years now? So that's how I really see our role. But I really see our role in shaping South Africa towards which reforms to prioritize. I think our challenge is prioritization. We speak about reforms, it's so broad. There's infrastructural reform, there's personnel reform, there's reform here and there, there's the anti-corruption reform. There's so much to be done. But it's, what are the priorities? How do you center people within those priorities? And I think that's our role as the public protector. We do outreach programs. We work closer with the people. We must be accessible to the people. How do we utilize those platforms to ensure that there is at least some consensus of governance that the people and the government find? So how do we utilize that role of the public protector? I mean, the public protector is an ombudsman, yet in South Africa, we are not a classical ombudsman. But what is the work of the ombudsman? It's mediation, appropriate dispute resolution. How do we bring government to the center of appropriate dispute resolution? I know that what we commonly known is alternative dispute resolution. But now we're saying, why must it be in the alternate? It shouldn't be in the alternate. It must be appropriate to the circumstance. Now, how do we utilize that part of our mandate to ensure that we bring about harmony? And I speak a lot about harmony because when there's no harmony, you see a lot of protests, and there's a lot of anger. But once there's harmony,
lots of distraction.
Precisely. But once there's that harmony, and I think that role of us as being the ombudsman is very critical in bringing about harmony. But most importantly, you cannot speak of governance in South Africa and not speak about governance in Africa. We are influenced by the African region. Recently, we've had to deal with the situation of foreigners allegedly being turned away from public hospitals. My counterpart in Zimbabwe contacted me and said, how do we resolve this? So how do we strategically place our country to assist in finding solutions even for other countries? But if we are unable to shape those solutions and prioritize what reforms we put in place for our own country, we can't do it for the rest of the continent.
Quite fascinating, because also the thing about the work that you do and its contribution to reforms is that you are not about resolving one case, but you are about dealing with systemic issues or highlighting systemic issues that are affecting service delivery and performance of departments and etc. So where do you start from? You talk about prioritizing. I've worked in government. We've spoken about priorities of priorities. But where do you start? Like if you were to prioritize 3 to 5 things around reforms in the public service, and I agree with you. I was having a conversation the last episode, the third episode, with Ivo, the executive director of the institute here. And what I was asking is, remember we've had a conversation about tracking the administrative reforms in the public service, and we have agreed that we need to do something about that. But where do we start? Because indeed there's Vulindlela, there's administrative reforms driven by DPSA, Vulindlela driven by the presidency, there's the anti-corruption reforms as well in the mix. There's a lot that's happening. What's your thinking around that? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Of course. I think the work that the DPSA has started, and I'm glad to hear that it has gone as far as Parliament, at least now. I want to simplify it this way. If you are not transformed as a person first, how do you transform the next? So for me, it really starts with the administrative reforms within the public service. It's the public servants themselves that we need to deal with first. And we need to define what kind of a public servant is required to take us through as a country for the next 30 years on. And it starts there. And I think the reforms, and I really hope and pray that they would actually go through and be accepted as they are. One, they are defining the public servant that's required. Because if you do not define the character of that public servant, it's going to be a challenge to then deal with the rest, because it is that character of the public servant, firstly, that must implement AI, that must ensure the integrity and the ethics of AI. It is that character of the public servant that must implement Vulindlela, that must ensure that we are driven in the right direction in terms of the anti-corruption reforms. Now, if you do not deal with the reform of the character of the public servant first, then for me, everything else, you might as well just not do it, because who is going to do it? The robot is not going to do it. Who is going to program that robot? So those are very critical for me. And there's one aspect I like, and probably it might be the most contentious aspect of the bill, Section 36, capital A, on clearly saying that those who serve on the administrative part of the public service cannot hold political position.
Oh, yeah.
And it's contentious. But it's important, because then if you do not decisively deal with that aspect, how do you deal with the political administrative interface? How do you deal with that separation of power? How do you deal with true accountability and oversight if after you leave this room, you are equals? You're actually colleagues.
So there's two issues, I think, that give some people sleepless nights about the bill. The first one relates to what you are talking, the limitation of political rights.
Yes.
And to accommodate the constitutional issues and the rights of association. So that limitation is for the heads of departments and those who report directly to them.
Yes.
So, and it doesn't mean they cannot still associate with political parties and vote for political parties of their choice, but they don't have to be in certain positions, leadership positions in those. The second one relates to the devolution of administrative powers. So, as you know, the Public Service Act currently, administrative powers that in terms of public management or public administration should be with the heads of departments are with the political principals, which and not in alignment with the PFMA, because the PFMA gives financial management responsibilities directly to the HODs. So those are the two kind of tight issues that I think are making some people doubt supporting the legislation itself. But my view personally is that it's time. It's time that why would you have HODs if you are not going to give them their responsibility, and not allow them to do their work and hold them accountable? And then I think it's Section 2 also that brings in that accountability, that says there must be checks and balance. The political principals must be able to hold the HODs accountable for their own deliverable. So it's at the NCOP now. It went through the National Assembly, so it's the last parts of the legislation itself. But for me, PP, again, you're speaking about the character and the type of a public servant. And again, I just want to ask you, with the reports that you do, with the work that you do currently, what kind of character and type of a public servant do you see just interacting with the reports and the work that you do as a public protector? What do you see currently in the system?
It's scary. There's two types. Unfortunately, the scary type is the one that
Is prominent.
is prominent, you know. It starts with being patriotic. Right? It starts with being patriotic. We see public servants who just do what they are being told. Because once you ask somebody to account, they say, but so-and-so said, I must do this. You see a public servant who has no regard for compliance mechanisms, no regard for checks and balances. But again, one who's got no regard for that professionalization that we are speaking of. And you see a kind of public servant who has got no clue. And who doesn't mind saying, I don't know. And one who doesn't take pride in the work that they do. But I think what's most scary for me is the kind of public servant who does not appreciate the impact of their role to the people of South Africa. They are unable to relate that they've got a direct impact to service delivery. They've got a direct impact to what's envisaged in our constitution to ensure a free and equal society, an equitable society, where resources are distributed equitably, service delivery is equitable. They see no role of them being advocates of social justice. And I think for me, that's the scary part. And then you have the minority, who are those who know what their role is and what it should be, but who do not necessarily have the courage to execute that role.
And who operate in an environment that may not be supportive as well.
Yes, that is not supportive, not conducive for that courageous person. I mean, public servants easily now refer you to, you saw so-and-so was killed in Richards Bay, so-and-so was killed in the Eastern Cape. And it's a very scary scenario, because if we allow that and move forward with this set of public servants and the environment within which they operate, then this democracy is under serious threat.
You've said a lot. So I'm just taking it in because we can't be the generation of public servants that are creating so much havoc in the system, and who are not willing to take responsibility for the havoc that we are creating. Yes. So you have a situation where politicians blame public servants, and public servants blame politicians. So again, which is why this issue around clarification of roles and responsibilities is very important. You spoke a little bit earlier on about the political administrative interface. Yes. And I'm also just interested to know how you are at the right in the middle of the political administrative interface as the Public Protector's Office in your investigations. How do you handle it? Do you investigate politicians? Do you investigate administrators? How do you navigate this space, and how do you handle it? Because I know it happens.
No, most definitely. And I think for us as the Public Protector, which is, by the way, the unique mandate we have in the world, we've got the power to investigate the president of the country. You know, unlike other countries where their legislations expressly states that you may not investigate a sitting president. But I think our constitution, and those who drafted it for the future. They knew that there would come a time where things are hard. And how do you protect the protector of the people? And the Constitution protects the public protector. The Constitution is very clear that the public protector must be independent. must be impartial, must do its work without fear, favor, prejudice. The public protector is only subject to the Constitution and the law, and administratively reports to Parliament. So not even Parliament can call the public protector to account on how the public protector handled a particular case, or even air their dissatisfaction on an outcome of the case. The processes are very clear. You go to court. But what as well absolves the public protector? The Constitution says it requires a fit and proper person, and a person who doesn't have any interaction within the political space, which is one thing which I think the reforms of the public service are bringing into the heads of departments and those who actually carry the authority to execute on the mandate. That's very critical, because you can't sit in one space and then the next moment be in another space and say something different. But also it is important that people see you walking your talk. So that's the critical part that the Constitution does for the public protector. But how do you then bring that into operations? The Public Protector Act says the public protector shall be supported by the deputy public protector, the CEO, and staff. Now, the public protector, by the way, is the head of institution, and the public protector is the executive authority of the institution, which I think places a huge responsibility on the public protector. Now, how do you ensure that you protect even yourself from this space where there's also political interface, you know? So how do you then utilize those powers that the Constitution and the Act gives you? So what we have done, we've also proposed some reforms to the Public Protector Act, which are actually influenced by the history and the crisis that we come from. And then we say, how do we protect this institution? But how do we protect the incumbent? There needs to be a clear separation between the incumbent as the natural person and the institution as a juristic person. But you need to build an institutional culture, not for the incumbent to come with personality into the institution. So that then becomes a challenge, because you become an institution that functions on the basis of personality rather than institutional culture. So that's the work.
The incumbent becomes so powerful as a head and as an executive authority.
Most definitely. And I mean, the Constitution and the Act put so much power on the public protector. So we've done that now. It's sitting with the Department of Justice. It's important that we have that clarity. But internally, we've also transformed our own SOPs, where we put clear protocol on the lifespan of a case. So I know people become frustrated when they call me and say, but I've got a case. And I'm like, okay, please give me the details of your case. I will then ask the COO to return this call and to meet with you. Everybody wants to meet with the public protector, because people actually think that I can make miracles.
I was actually going to ask you and say, let's make this thing practical. I am the minister.
Yes.
You've been investigating me, or I get wind that I'm getting investigated, or there's something that has my name on it that is with the public protector.
Yes.
I pick up a phone and I call Advocate Gcaleka. There's this matter and this matter I want to discuss with you. I'd like to meet you. So how do you respond to that?
It's very clear. There is a lifespan and an ecosystem of a case. And in most instances, I don't even know that case. I haven't even had insight into that case, you know. Yes, it might be classified as a special attention matter where they bring it to my attention. Now, that's to manage the media relations, the public perception around the matter and so forth. But I don't approve the investigation plan. The investigation plan are approved by the technical team and supervisors to those investigators. I don't even appoint the investigator or the investigation team. There is clear protocol on receipt of the matter, screening, assessment, allocation, the day-to-day inspections of matter, which is, by the way, on a case management system. So, the process of digitizing has also assisted us, because if I log on today and go on to a certain matter, it is going to be recorded on the system.
Audit trail.
If I log on and make a comment, it is there on the matter. So I clearly inform people, how do we function? And I make a suggestion. I then suggest that you contact the investigator or the contact person, because when the public protector writes to you, and now that's not the public protector as in me, but as in the institution, they would say, for inquiries, this is the lead investigator in the matter. I'll suggest that you contact the lead investigator. But where there's a dissatisfaction, there's protocols. Has the executive manager intervened? Has the chief operations officer intervened? Has the CEO intervened? I am the last resort. But also, I work on advice. I work on facts, and I work on the law. So that's basically how the
space for rumors.
There's no space for rumors.
No space for gossip.
No, definitely.
And also, it seems that your work goes beyond accountability. I mean, beyond just investigations and accountability, but into prevention.
Yes.
And there's also some other structures in the broader reforms agenda, public service reforms agenda. I'm thinking about the Public Service Commission. I'm thinking about the Auditor General of South Africa. How do you as institutions work together as part of this bigger idea? I mean, I know you have the structure as well that you sit in that coordinates, but how does that work? Because I've heard that structure also, they've received some presentations on professionalization and etc. But how does that work? How do you coordinate from that point of view?
Well, from the institutions supporting democracy, we've got a forum. FISD, okay. Yes. So how we work, really, it's on the basis of policy issues that affects us, even legislative reforms that we might have an impact in and so forth. But we are very careful, because we even have the power to investigate one another. For instance, the Auditor General audits all of us, and the Public Protector has got the power to investigate everybody else within, those institutions. But how we are governed as the FISD is important. We work on the basis of MOUs, and you can't have a one-size-fits-all. The MOU I have with the AG, the MOU I have with the Public Service Commission can't be the same. It is dependent on what are the issues. For instance, the AG audits performance management and financial management and accountability. What do? We look into the administrative part of that. Are there any malfeasance? The AG might say there's been wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure, and probably states have findings on what caused that and what needs to be done. Ours is to look deeper into the system and say, was there any maladministration in this, And the relationship we have with the AG, for instance, she refers those matters to us. And especially once they become systemic, and she realizes, man, for the past 2 to 3 years, I've been auditing on this project, the same results. What's happening? Public Protector, look into this. We do that. The PSC, the same. And the PSC, their powers go until a certain limit, limited to the Public Service Act, and beyond that, what then happens is the Public Protector who comes in, but also the forensic capabilities that the Public Protector has. So we do have that kind of a relationship, but we also do joint investigations. There's joint investigations we did with the Human Rights Commission on the Alexandra Township. They dealt with the human rights part, and we dealt with the administrative and governance part, and also the anti-corruption part. Because what is important about collaboration is that you know where to spend your resources, and you avoid coming at variance from one another, whereas the purpose, it's the same. But it's not only looking into FISD. What has made the PPSA a success, at least in the past year, as we about to report to Parliament on our performance of the past financial year, what has assisted us is looking into the people and the institutions we investigate as stakeholders. They are part of the ecosystem. They are the ones who must fix. We are not going to govern on behalf of government. So they need to be part of this process. So building that rapport and building an understanding of the role. The role of the public protector is not just to be punitive, but the role of the public protector is to be that pillar. It's to be that mirror. So how do we then transform the mindset within the state to see the public protector like that? But also collaborations with civil society. For the public to see themselves also having the power to hold government accountable and state functionaries accountable, because they do. So how do we then interface our mandate into that and ensure that we're at the center of this ecosystem in building a capable state, an ethical state, because we are vested with those powers in terms of ethics. The Executive Members Ethics Act gives us that power. But how do we place ourselves in the center of that ecosystem and not just looking from afar? Because if you just look from afar, it becomes very difficult to penetrate the system. There was a time where the implementation of our remedial action was sitting at 2%. Now, that directly affects the impact. We might produce the report. It's not about the production of that report and the investigation. The power is in the implementation of the remedial action. What does it say? Do we relate?
So relating plays a critical role and buy-in from the people who must implement the remedial actions.
Most definitely, you need to bring them on board. You need to bring them on board, because accountability is not merely on somebody responding to you, but it's about somebody taking that report and say, indeed, I went wrong here. And I see which direction I'm being directed to, and I take responsibility for that. And I consequence manage that. So you need to build that relationship into the system and also into the investigative system. So at least now our remedial action is sitting at 50%, and this has taken us less than 2 years to ensure that we are at 50%, and we are really hoping that by the end of this 5-year cycle, we would at least be at 85%. We're really hoping for 100%, because what does that mean? That state functionaries are taking full responsibility. So for me, it's an entire ecosystem, and Parliament is also at the center of this ecosystem as well, because how do we interface with Parliament, since they've got oversight powers and also powers to enforce accountability? So how do we work together? For instance, the issue of petitions. I'd say the reason why people resolve to violent protests and protests at large, not that I'm condoning them, it's because of that role of accountability and oversight that Parliament holds that people do not feel in their day-to-day lives. Through petitions that they file, you would find that the petition system in the country, roughly, it's between 8 to 10 years behind. Now imagine that member of the public have written to Parliament, who ultimately is the one who must enforce accountability. And then they end up coming to the public protector. But is that what we want to see? No, we want to see Parliament playing that central role in accountability that is given to them by... Yes. However, we investigate Parliament and we investigate the judiciary. However, we can't investigate decisions of a sitting.
Oh, Okay.
that goes to court.
That
And
makes sense.
and it's the same with the judiciary. We do not investigate court decisions, but we investigate conduct of judges. We investigate their administrative power. So that's how much authority the public protector has.
So I want us, as we move towards closing, I just want us to reflect on how the public protector as an institution, and I don't want to say could work with, because your role is investigation, it's not to do the work of government. But what are some of, how can government, what are some of the practical ways in which government can really look at the issue of ethics and integrity in the public service, both from a point of politicians as well as politicians who are part of the system, as well as public servants? I'm asking this because at the core of this work of reforming the public service is that we are contributing towards building a capable and ethical, a credible, capable and ethical public service. So just ideas for public servants who are listening, or senior managers who are listening, what are some of the things in your view that could really make this idea of ethics, embedding ethics in the public service, be seen as practical and possible in the system?
You know, ethics is a very complicated one because it's not prescribed.
Yeah. Values. It's aligned to values.
It's aligned to values and principles. And it comes back to that issue of character. What is the character of this public servant? It comes back to the issue of patriotism. But let's put a measure to it. And I think that's what you want. It needs to have a measure. One, I'm going to start with the political leadership, because you can't start with administrative leadership if you do not deal with the political leadership. And the political leadership needs to live the language of ethics. The standard must not be a contravention of a law. There must be an ethical standard. But maybe I started it in the center. It starts with the citizens, with voters. It starts with the voters. If you vote, and now there's even independent candidates who are outside of political parties. So if you vote for this political party or for this person, and local government is the most interesting sector, because in local government, there's very close relation between the citizens and the political leadership. They know you. If you're a councillor in that area, they would tell you, you are so-and-so's child, you go to that church, you went to that school, you grew up like this. For me, that is where it starts. And citizens need to take their responsibility in that. If you vote for an individual or a political party, knowing very clearly that it has no capabilities of ensuring change towards the right direction, they don't uphold ethics, then why do you think their leadership is going to be different? So how do you bring the citizens first in taking responsibility in ensuring ethics and integrity? Then you come to the political leadership for taking that responsibility and taking their work seriously. Because when you go through our constitution, it's centered around the plight of the people, not a political party or a political individual. When they take oath on assumption of office, it is to the constitution and the people of the country. Now, that's a very crucial ethical dimension on who do you commit yourself to. So that's where it starts as well for me, for the political leadership. The administrative leadership. In the office, even as we are busy drafting our annual report, people like to attach feelings, and they would say, I am pleased to present this. I am grateful for this. And I'm like, why must I be
Grateful
grateful?
for the opportunity to...
It might be small things, but what does it mean to be grateful? Who are you grateful to? You know, there's one politician who once said something very profound to me, and she was criticizing the issue of corruption. And she said, you know, we actually take South Africans for granted. As politicians, you would find yourself, you're sitting at home. You never even thought that you would sit in front of a desk and take a decision. You've probably never even earned a salary in your life. The people give you a salary. Once you take up that position, you feel that that salary is not enough, and you still want to steal from the people. So if everyone could actually have that mindset, and stealing is not only about stealing money, it's also stealing time for the people, not doing that which you ought to do during the time when you are allocated to do that.
Yeah.
Because time is money. That time is budgeted for. But it is shifting the mindset. For me, really, it's about the mindset shift more than the prescripts. Because what actually causes challenges is what happens behind the curtain.
Yeah.
More than what we all see. But if we would conduct ourselves in a manner that even if I'm behind that curtain, people might not see me, but I see myself, and what responsibility do I take to what I see? And I think that's very important. But that is the standard for me that we should put for ourselves. Now, where do we place the standard? We place it with political deployments, when the executive authorities are being deployed into government. The standard must not be, yes, we do want politicians who've gone to school. But if you look at state capture in our country, those who've eroded our governance systems were highly educated. In fact, they were regarded as the best administrators in our country, best bureaucrats of their time. They knew the system too well, but they lacked the ethics. They lacked the respect for the system. So in political deployment, over and above the education and everything, it is the character of the being is important. How do you measure that?
Exactly.
Where have they led before? Where have they led before? What happened to those institutions which they led? But also it calls upon the political sector to have a performance measurement tool. When you don't have a performance measurement tool at that level, and you expect to enforce it on the administrative interface, how are you going to enforce it when you are not accountable yourself?
So basically, it's calling for the political sector to professionalize. And by
Definitely.
political sector professionalizing, like the public sector professionalizing,
Yes.
qualifications are just part of the game.
Yes.
There is other things. There is competence.
Yes.
Because qualifications do not guarantee competence.
Of course.
There is competence, and fortunately there's some tools you can use to measure competency, and
Yes.
they have limitations, those tools as well.
Yeah.
There is also, you are raising a very critical issue, that there is the character of the person.
Yes.
And that measurement of a character of a person is very important.
It is.
Because somebody once said in a conversation that you can't have a mayor who hasn't even run a spaza shop. How is that person going to run the entire city? They have not even attempted running a spaza shop type of a thing.
Yes.
But it was just an informal communication. It was an informal conversation. But the point of it is simple, that competence, qualifications, character are some of the critical ingredients in ensuring that there is a professionalized output that comes out of people.
No,
so this topic around professionalizing the political system, it's something we don't talk about a lot, but I am noting it, that it's something I want to go back and investigate and call the relevant people to talk about it.
Yes.
I know one or two people who have been championing it within the government within the system. It would be
Yes.
interesting to have a chat around that. But I am noting it. Thank you for triggering it again in me.
And you've got all the liberty to do it now. You've got all the liberty to do it now.
I'm enjoying my freedom.
You're not going to be afraid. You are not operating within a legislative framework that says your role starts here.
Comply. You can't talk about politicians.
And that's above your pay grade.
That's above your pay grade. Oh, my goodness.
So you've got all the liberty to do that. And what is critical about that? It is then going to translate into the administrative recruitment system.
Yeah.
And we need to integrate this into the recruitment system. As you say, you must have this competency. You must have a merit-based competency on ethics.
Yeah.
Do we as employers, when I am employing an accounting officer, do I say, where is this person led? Can you go into the audit reports during this time and this time for these institutions? What are the AG's findings during this person's time of leadership in those institutions? We don't do that. This has actually come out when we were doing the Inokom Gcaleka case. The administrators who committed the maladministration in Inokom Gcaleka.
Inokom Gcaleka is in Queenstown.
In Queenstown, in the Eastern Cape.
Yeah, that stadium. That was not finished. That was not done.
That was not done. But they have a track record of maladministration, just that they were never caught. Now you ask yourself, how were they then employed further into other municipalities, having left so much erosion in administration in these other municipalities? I mean, one of them was actually even reported to have had a fraudulent certificate.
Oh my goodness. And nobody did anything about it.
They kept on being promoted. Even after Inokom Gcaleka, by the way, they were appointed into promotional roles in other municipalities. Whereas the maladministration was known by the MEC in the province. And that's why we took remedial action against the MEC. Yes, he was not involved in the corruption, but he knew. And there's also even a prerogative on the MEC to keep a register of senior officials within municipalities who revolve around the municipalities.
And that circulation and revolving around municipalities, yes. They mess in this municipality, they move to the next.
Precisely. And they're appointed as administrators in the next municipality or even in the other province. And they do the same mess because they know that there's no accountability, there's no consequence management. But what we have done in that case, which I really hope this reform will be implemented. And if it's not implemented, I think it would be our first test case where the public protector actually take the states to court for non-implementation of remedial action, where we are saying that COGTA must then develop the standards like the public service where
for municipalities.
For those who circulate. Consequence management. If you work for the state, there's a case where the former Chief Justice says he doesn't understand why it must be said somebody is at B now. They were at C when they committed this. Which state is B? Which state is C? Isn't it the South African state?
It's one state.
It's one state.
I mean, hence in the reform agenda as well. I mean, if you look at the Public Administration and Management Bill, this idea of coordination, this idea of a single public service, but I think in a phased-in approach, coordination, strengthening coordination between local government and the public service, so that somebody does not run away from a national department and go to a municipality. Because if they run away from a national department with cases or issues around them, they will be picked up in the system if they go to a province. But if they go to a municipality, they won't be picked up because the systems don't talk together. And I mean, systems in municipality, even amongst municipalities, they don't talk together, which is why it's so important for COGTA to really develop some mechanism and a system and procedures around those particular issues. That would really assist a lot in terms of also just with the Zondo state capture report as well. That gap was picked up, and I know that it's some of the work that my former colleagues are doing with the municipalities, rather with COGTA as well. So that's a very important recommendation, PP.
Yes, because you can't effect consequence management if there's no method in which to effect it. And we'll see how they're going to do it here.
Method.
Yes. So we're going to see what they're going to do in the Inagim Gijima, but we said the strength of the public protector's report is enough for you to effect the consequence management. However,
so when are you going
put in place? We actually busy arranging a meeting with the Premier as well as the governance structures within the Eastern Cape to actually assess how far they are with the implementation plan.
Interesting. I hope you will give us a press conference after that so that we get updated as people with interest on this particular work.
Yes.
I also just, probably as a last question before I ask about your call to action, in your view, I'm taking us back to the professionalization and amendments. In your view, how does the professionalization framework specifically, and remember the framework focuses a lot on the human resource aspect of the public service, as well as the public service amendments that are now in the NCOP. How do these contribute to your work as PP?
It contributes directly. It's some of the remedial actions that we've taken. For instance, it's important that the recruitment system becomes merit-based, so that it also takes away, whether it's just a perception or it's real, that it's commonly known as jobs for pals, for instance. It takes away that aspect, because if the recruitment process is merit-based, there's a clear standard on which somebody has been appointed into a particular position. But most importantly is what we've spoken about, removing the heads of departments or those who've got authority in implementation from the political sector, so that there is clear separation of powers and there is clear accountability and transparency, but also it instills public confidence, and I think those are the critical measures that are being taken. But most importantly, I think the reforms set a very clear direction of where the public service ought to be. And we must acknowledge that we are behind.
Way behind.
Way behind. But also it puts emphasis on that oversight perspective. And I really wish that the political leadership will see it that way, because you can't be a referee and a player at the same time. How do you enforce accountability and oversight when you too have got an administrative role? Because it's easier, from what you say, is to shift the goalposts, and that's what we've actually seen. But on the one hand, the heads of departments, directors general, the HODs, the authority that is placed on the position needs to come with the responsibility that that position is being given. And I think the reforms do that. And hopefully it will also help to change the mindset. Because if the head of department thinks that their job are merely there to listen to what they are being told, are they going to execute their tasks? Seriously, no. So I think when the responsibilities are correctly placed where they ought to be, for me, I think it will really take our country forward.
Great. I really like that, because this thing of limiting political rights. I was told about a case in one of the provinces I shall not mention, a case where somebody who is belonging in a leadership structure, is in the leadership structure of the political party in the province, applies for a job as a head of department, and then promises that, commits that when they get the job, they are going to relinquish their role as a head of department. When they get the job, they'll relinquish the political role. They get into the job, they decide they are no longer relinquishing the political role. Wow. So they have this political role and they have the job. And now the challenge with that is that the political principle of the HOD is not in the leadership, in the leadership structure, is not occupying a role in the leadership structure in the political party, and they come from the same political party. So it creates so much tensions and issues around respect, because both of us are politicians. And then me, I become a politician as an HOD and an HOD. So those issues really are issues, and they constrain functioning of a department, because that tension spreads across the system itself.
Authority.
Yep.
What authority do they have over that person?
Yeah.
And Ms. Makas, this translates into, and I know politicians would easily say, but that's not your terrain, you should stay away from that. But it is a reality of why we're having the challenges that we're having. Why Parliament has never been able to effectively and efficiently enforce oversight and accountability. And when I say Parliament, I also speak about the legislatures. When you look into the political seniorities between those who are deployed in the executives and those who are deployed into the legislature, how do they hold them accountable? And you see that gap. So even worse now, when it's in administration, how do they enforce accountability? How do they hold them accountable? How do they have oversight? But the most crucial one for me is time. Now, if you are a chief administrator and you are a politician at the same time, when are you going to get the time to do both?
You must attend PEC meetings, PwC meetings.
Precisely.
This and that. You must go to branches. You must,
yes.
Oh my goodness.
And also,
and you must still run a department.
Allocation of resources. How are you going to prioritize the resources? With an interest. For me, it's a conflict of interest. You're conflicted, So it's really to remove that conflict in the public administration. And I think the reforms as they are set that very clearly.
Thank you, Pipi. Your call to action. So I have this call of action in two ways. I'd like you, because you are a young person, or you inspire young people. I don't know your age.
Let's use the latter.
But, I don't know your age, but I know that you look young. And you inspire young people. You appeal to young people. And I just want you, in your call of action, to really maybe start by what is your call of what is your call to action to young public servants who are right at the low levels, because most of them are just at the low levels, who know what is the right thing to do, but are unable to do it because of the environment they are in, and because they are so junior, they are so scared of the seniors in the system itself. And they're the ones, by the way, who are foot soldiers, who are doing the work. What is your message to them?
And they're actually the ones whom the public interfaces with.
Yes.
When the public comes to the public servant, to the public service rather, they don't meet the DG. Yep. They meet that young person who's at the coal face of service delivery. It's for them. I believe that being a public servant is a calling. The same breath you use when you say, I come here to put bread on my table, you must also say, I come here to put bread on somebody else's table. It might not be the bread in terms of monetary value, but it's in terms of the delivery that you produce. So it's for them to be conscious of that. That when you deal with that paper is somebody's life.
Yeah.
That pen and writing pad, somebody's life is written in there. So, and your calling as a public servant is to redress the imbalances of the past. Actually, I think what should be done in the public service when people are being inducted is to induct them on the Constitution. And what that Constitution translates into the everyday job that they do. What does because it's like going to church and they don't read the Bible. They don't remind you on what is the law here. The law in church is the Bible. Now, when we induct people, we don't remind them what's the law here. And that's why you find public servants and very senior ones at that who would say to you, no, but I'm governed by this legislation, and for me to do that, there needs to be an amendment in legislation. And you say to them, but there's the Constitution that speaks of cooperation and intergovernance. And where do you put that, which is the supreme law of the land? So my message to them really is that you need to know why you occupy a certain space. And if you are a person who doesn't like people, the public service is not for you. It's not for you. Because there's a direct impact with the power, the duty, and the person whom you serve. Direct impact. And whether you make a positive change or a negative change. For me, that is called service delivery. But secondly, we must acknowledge the environment within which they function, right? They're young people, they want to grow, they've got ambition. And they probably didn't think that the public service is like this. I'll tell you what worked for me. I didn't care who likes me and who doesn't. Like it didn't matter to me. And I think I was the most unliked employee as I grew up in the public service.
That makes you focus on your work. Yes. You are not chit-chatting with everybody, you are focusing on your work.
Do what you are here to do. Don't carry somebody else's bag. That is not going to instill knowledge into you. Don't do that.
Don't make tea for somebody else.
You're not there to make tea,
Even if you're an intern, you're not there to make tea.
Not at all. Not at all. If somebody can't make their own tea, they must find somebody who specializes in that field. So, but be bold. Firstly, be bold about who you are as a person, because there's no way you can be bold about your functions as a public servant if you are not bold about who you are as a person. That's very important. Be bold about who you are as a public servant and what you are there to do. If you do not associate or you do not relate with the material conditions of people who approach you to deliver a service to them, then it's a challenge. Read, empower yourself. You don't have to have lived in Soweto to know the plight of the people of Soweto or in the rural areas, that just you not processing that document will deprive that person of medication. That's how you need to relate. Read, empower yourself. Because what I have actually found is that even principals, if you ask the right hows and whys and whats that are based on knowledge, trust me, nobody will make you to do that which you ought not to do. In fact, you'll be one of those who are not touched. This one is going to ask too many questions. So empower yourself, study. You're not studying for today, you are studying for tomorrow. Build yourself as a global citizen so that you impact your country in that way. Be careful whom you associate with. It counts. Be careful whom you associate with. Be careful what instructions you carry. If you read, you will know whether this is a lawful or an unlawful instruction. And dare and say, if this is unlawful, I do not have the authority to do it. At least respect a person that far to say, no, in my duties, I don't have the authority to do this. And you've subtly informed the person that this is illegal. Because those who actually are the drivers of corruption are not necessarily those who hold the highest positions. When we look into procurement, for instance, it's the BEC and the BAC. Yep. And some of them are not even aware that they are committing irregularities. But if they would have read and equipped themselves with the role that they are going to perform, they would be able to ask the right questions. That, for me, is my message to young people. But also, Ms. Makasi, I've got a message to parents of young people. Build the self-esteem and confidence of your children. Nurture your children. Develop your children.
And a good half, because what if the parents don't even have the self-confidence themselves?
Yes. You know, self-confidence, there's a direct relation between self-confidence and standing your ground and authority in the workplace.
Definitely.
If you do not have that, you will even doubt the right that you are doing, because you do not have the self-esteem and the confidence to do those. And even those of you who are mentors, I think it's important to bring in upbringing into who the person becomes in the workplace and in the leadership position. I normally say my mom she literally used to take a dishcloth and hit me with it when I drag my feet. You know, I walk into the kitchen and my shoes go. Shh, shh. Yeah, you can't hit them today. But she literally used to say to me, "Can you imagine walking into a workplace tomorrow and you walk like that?" Ushiqiza, precisely. But you know, you actually see employees today who grew up being left when they enter the kitchen or when they must execute a task, because bashiqiza in the workplace.
So
unbothered. So that for me is important, you know, because it molds the young person. It's those values. It's that value system you create at home, and how I take that value system into the world. It's the individual values that build a team value. There's no value that you say it's a team value. It starts somewhere. And for me, really, that's how it starts. And that's how you build a work culture.
Yeah, no. In Xhosa we say, uthethe kwavokoteka, which means you have spoken so well. We have shared. I can see the passion coming out from you. So we now have reached the end of our podcast. And I have so many things in my mind that are coming through. But there is this word that I wrote here: merit-based competency on ethics.
Yes.
This is something you shared, and it's just sticking in my mind, because it's so important that when we talk about recruitment, we bring in the ethics, not just into the recruitment process, but we have a mechanism to check the ethics of the people who are applying for the roles and responsibilities. And the other thing that I think is important coming out of this conversation is this idea of exploring, and it's something beyond my I don't have a paycheck currently that relates to these things.
Yes.
In that context, but this thing of professionalizing the political system, or
Yes.
the politics within the public service, professionalizing the political component of the public service,
Yes.
to complement the administrative professionalization as well, is quite an interesting topic that you've unearthed as well, that I think we should think with my team around. We take it forward. But I do want to say that you heard the public protector. She says we must be bold, we must be confident, and it's very important that in the reforms, in the agenda of reforming the state, we are bold as the different people who are playing roles in that agenda. We need heads of departments who are bold, who are knowledgeable. We need employees, senior managers who are bold, who are knowledgeable, who know their ethics, who know the limits. And thank you very much, Pipi. It was really a very good conversation. And indeed, it is Service Delivery Month. There's lots of activities in September focusing on service delivery. And I think this conversation will really tie in very well with those conversations. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.